Welcome back to Fusty Stories. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and get ready for another story you won't forget. Let's dive back to the story. Angela James had known suffering since birth. Raised in a creaky orphanage on the outskirts of London, she grew up watching other children get adopted while she was left behind for being too quiet. Life taught her endurance early, the art of surviving pain with grace. At 18, she was taken in by Vivian Charles, a wealthy but cold-hearted widow who promised her a home and family. Instead, she found herself treated as a servant. Every morning, she swept marble floors, prepared tea for Vivian's spoiled daughter, Clarissa, who mocked her patched dresses and callous hands. Yet, despite everything, Angela dreamed of one day owning a small restaurant, a dream that made her smile even through hunger and exhaustion. Vivian enjoyed reminding her of her worthlessness, often saying, "You're lucky I didn't leave you on the street." Still, Angela obeyed, working tirelessly and saving every coin she could. She never complained, never fought back, though tears would soak her pillow at night. Her solace came from feeding pigeons behind the manor, where she whispered prayers to a God she still believed loved her. That fragile hope kept her alive. That hope and her secret plan to escape one day. Vivian Charles was not cruel by accident. She was cruel by choice. A socialite obsessed with power and image, she viewed Angela as a tool to maintain her lifestyle. When her debts mounted after her husband's death, she saw an opportunity in the naive orphan's beauty. Vivian hosted lavish parties filled with rich businessmen and politicians, parading Angela in simple gowns to catch attention. "Smile and serve," Vivian would hiss, her painted lips forming a fake smile. One evening, her scheme took a darker turn. Desperate for quick cash, Vivian arranged a secret meeting between Angela and a mysterious rich man, claiming he needed a companion for a charity event. Angela resisted, but Vivian threatened to throw her out. That night, Angela was drugged, led into a luxurious suite, and the night changed her life forever. The man she met didn't know her name. He was kind at first, lonely and gentle, calling himself Kel. They shared deep conversation and wine, and though she tried to leave, confusion clouded her mind. Hours later, she woke up alone, humiliated and ashamed. Vivian acted indifferent. "You got what you deserved," she spat. That was the night that broke Angela's innocence and unknowingly tied her destiny to the most powerful man in the country. Weeks turned into months, and Angela began to feel strange. She vomited in the mornings, grew dizzy often, and her appetite changed. The truth hit her one morning when a doctor at a free clinic whispered, "You're pregnant." The news shattered her world. Panic surged. She had no husband, no family, and no money. When she told Vivian, the woman's fury was volcanic. "How dare you disgrace my house with a bastard child?" she screamed and threw her onto the street with nothing but a small bag of clothes. Homeless, hungry, and terrified, Angela wandered the city's alleys, enduring mockery and pity from strangers. Yet, amidst the despair, she vowed not to give up. She rented a tiny room above an old woman's shop and began selling roasted corn by the roadside. Rain or shine, she stood under a tattered umbrella, her belly growing, her spirit unbroken. The city saw a poor corn seller, but inside her lived the strength of a mother determined to protect her child. The identity of the man who fathered her baby remained a mystery to her, but she'd never known Kel's true name. President Anthony Kelvin was not born into power. He earned it through brilliance and relentless ambition. Born in Edinburgh to middle-class teachers, he rose through military ranks, became a decorated commander, and eventually the youngest president in British history. But power came with loneliness. After discovering his fiancée, Tina Morrison, in bed with his political rival, he lost trust in love. He buried his heartbreak behind pressed smiles and diplomatic handshakes. The scandal was hushed, but the wound never healed. His nights were long and sleepless, filled with memories of betrayal. One evening, seeking escape, he went out in disguise as Kel, without bodyguards or titles, just a man craving peace. That was when he met a woman at a private suite during a charity weekend arranged by his friend. Unaware she was coerced into being there. She seemed pure, fragile, and painfully innocent. He never forgot her laughter or her trembling hands. But when morning came, he was gone, convinced it was just a fleeting moment between two lonely souls. What he didn't know was that that single night would come back to change his entire destiny. Months later, Anthony's life was a blur of meetings, international visits, and press conferences. Yet, despite all the faces he met, the image of that woman haunted him. He couldn't explain why. Perhaps it was her eyes or her voice. Meanwhile, the public still speculated about his broken engagement with Tina, though he maintained a dignified silence. The betrayal gnawed at him. One afternoon, during a motorcade tour through a small district, his convoy stopped at a roadside due to a traffic block. There, standing under the rain with a baby bump and a basket of corn, he saw her. She was drenched, yet smiling as she served a customer. Anthony's heart froze. He felt something tug inside him, recognition, compassion, perhaps guilt. He told his driver to wait, stepped out despite protests, and bought corn from her. Angela looked up, confused but polite, unaware she was speaking to the president himself. Their eyes met, and in that silent exchange, an invisible connection sparked. Anthony left that day unsettled, carrying the taste of roasted corn and a memory that refused to fade. Anthony couldn't forget the encounter. The woman's resilience captivated him. Days later, he sent one of his aides, James Barrett, to find out who she was. Just curiosity, he lied. When Barrett returned with her file, Angela James, orphan, homeless, pregnant, Anthony's chest tightened. He visited her market again in disguise, this time bringing food and supplies. Angela was cautious but grateful. They began to talk, sharing small stories between customers. She told him about her dreams of owning a restaurant, about the baby she was expecting, and the cruel woman who threw her out. Anthony, touched beyond words, started helping her secretly, paying her rent, arranging medical care, always anonymously. For the first time in years, he felt alive. Yet, he didn't reveal his true identity. He told himself it was better that way, that she needed kindness, not a headline. As the weeks passed, their bond deepened. The president, the most powerful man in the country, found comfort in a poor corn seller's humility. Tina Morrison, Anthony's ex-fiancée, couldn't accept losing him, or the public humiliation that followed her cheating scandal. A cunning journalist and socialite, she swore to reclaim her power by any means. When she noticed Anthony's sudden disappearances and unplanned visits to a low-income district, she grew suspicious. Hiring a private investigator, she followed him and discovered his strange interest in a pregnant street vendor. Mocking laughter filled her apartment as she whispered, "So this is what he's fallen for? A pauper?" Meanwhile, Vivian Charles crossed paths with Angela again at the market. Seeing her former maid selling corn enraged her pride. She spat venom, calling her a disgrace. But Vivian had her own reasons for fear. She was deeply in debt, and any connection to Anthony Kelvin's secret outings could be lucrative leverage. Two wicked women, unaware of each other's roles in the past, began circling the same innocent target. Fate had begun to weave a dangerous web. One afternoon, Anthony visited Angela after hearing she had fainted at the market. Finding her weak, he carried her to a nearby clinic. As the doctor examined her, he felt an overwhelming protectiveness he couldn't explain. When he saw the unborn baby scan, something inside him melted. He felt an inexplicable bond, like destiny pulling him closer. Angela, overwhelmed by his kindness, began to see him not just as a stranger, but as a friend who made her believe in goodness again. That evening, Anthony confessed his past heartbreak, describing how betrayal destroyed his trust. Angela shared her own suffering, her forced night, her loneliness, and her determination to raise a baby. Tears filled his eyes as realization flickered in his heart. Though he couldn't yet connect the dots, he knew their paths were no coincidence. That night, he made a vow to protect her and her unborn child, no matter what. The truth came like a thunderstorm. During a routine background check, Barrett discovered a hotel record, a booking under the alias Kell, on the same date Angela described her coerced night. Shocked, Barrett confronted Anthony privately. "Sir, she's the woman from that night." The president's world spun. Every memory, every gesture, every tear suddenly made sense. The child she carried, it was his. Anthony's knees weakened. Guilt and disbelief crushed him. He had unknowingly abandoned her after a night meant to heal his heartbreak. The woman he now loved was the same one he had left behind, carrying his child. Fear flooded his heart. If the press found out, his presidency would crumble. But the greater pain was personal. He had hurt the only woman who ever loved him sincerely. He stared at her photo on his desk, whispering, "How do I tell her?" Anthony couldn't bear the secret any longer. He visited Angela at sunset his heart pounding. She was sitting by her corn stand, watching children play. When he knelt before her, her eyes widened. "Why are you kneeling?" she asked softly. He took her hand. "Because I've done something unforgivable." She didn't understand until he removed his disguise. The air froze as she recognized his face from television screens. "You're the president," she gasped. He nodded, trembling. Then, with tears, he whispered the truth. "Angela, I was the man that night. I'm the father of your child." The world around her blurred. She stepped back, shaking. Shock, disbelief, anger, and heartbreak crashed together. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. You were him?" she cried, her voice breaking. He reached out, but she pulled away, tears streaming down her face. "You destroyed my life," she screamed before running off into the night. And for the first time, President Anthony Kelvin, the man who led a nation, stood utterly powerless. Angela didn't sleep that night. Every breath hurt. Every heartbeat felt like betrayal echoing through her chest. She couldn't reconcile the man who'd fed her, cared for her, and smiled gently with the one who had unknowingly taken everything from her. The humiliation of her past, the pain of her pregnancy, the sleepless nights, all tied to him. When Anthony sent messages through Barrett, she refused to read them. She moved to another neighborhood, hiding herself from his reach. Her only focus now was her unborn child. Anthony, on the other hand, spiraled into torment. The palace halls that once echoed with political meetings now fell hollow. Every briefing blurred into noise. "Sir, we need you," Barrett urged one evening, but Anthony could barely speak. "How do I rule a country when I fail the only person who ever trusted me?" he whispered. His face, once confident before cameras, grew pale and hollow. For the first time, the nation's most powerful man was a man undone by love and guilt. Tina Morrison smelled blood. She had been following rumors about a mysterious woman connected to the president's recent absences. When a photograph surfaced, Anthony buying corn from a street vendor, she knew she'd struck gold. With cunning precision, she leaked the photo to a gossip log, twisting the story into scandal. President secretly meets pregnant lover? The nation erupted overnight. Talk shows, news panels, and tabloids all speculated wildly. Anthony's political enemies seized the moment, questioning his moral integrity. Within hours, reporters camped outside the presidential mansion. Barrett rushed into his office with headlines flashing across his tablet. "Sir, this will destroy everything." Anthony's jaw clenched. "I'll not deny the truth," he said coldly, "but I won't let her suffer for it." Meanwhile, Angela read the headline while frying corn. The paper slipped from her trembling hand. Her secret, her shame, was now public. The scandal intensified. Protesters gathered outside the presidential gates. Opposition leaders demanded Anthony's resignation. In Parliament, whispers of impeachment began. His approval ratings plummeted, but his only concern was Angela's safety. He ordered private protection around her, though she remained unaware. Vivian Charles saw the chaos and, recognizing Angela's face in the newspaper, plotted to exploit the situation. She contacted Tina with a malicious proposal, one that would fetch her wealth and revenge. Together, they fabricated stories of how Angela seduced the president for money. They sold fake evidence to the media, messages, edited videos, doctored bank receipts. Overnight, the narrative changed from sympathy to hatred. People mocked Angela publicly, calling her a manipulator and opportunist. Shops refused to sell her goods. Rocks were thrown at her door. Alone and terrified, she began to crumble under the pressure. For the first time, she considered giving up until she felt her baby kick and whispered through tears, "I'll fight. For you." Barrett secretly found Angela's location and convinced her to move to a private estate outside the city, under Anthony's quiet arrangement. There, surrounded by green hills and fresh air, she could finally breathe again. A kind housekeeper named Maria, who lost her own child years ago, cared for her like a daughter. Angela, still distant and cold toward Anthony, focused on her pregnancy. She painted, wrote letters to her unborn baby, and helped Maria in the garden. Anthony visited often, but always kept a respectful distance. He brought books, flowers, and baby clothes, hoping she'd talk to him again. "You don't owe me forgiveness," he once said softly, "but I owe you the truth and my protection." Slowly, her anger softened into confusion. Despite everything, She could see his remorse was real. For the first time in months, she allowed him to sit beside her, both watching the sunset in silence. Two broken souls trying to rebuild something from the ruins. One stormy night, Angela went into labor. Maria screamed for help as lightning tore through the sky. The local doctor arrived too late. Anthony himself drove her to a private hospital through flooded roads. The pain was unbearable, her hands clutching his tightly. "Don't leave me," she whispered through tears. "Never again," he vowed. Hours later, the cry of a newborn filled the room. A baby boy, dark-eyed and calm. Angela wept, holding him close, while Anthony watched in awe, tears streaming freely. For the first time, he wasn't President Anthony Kelvin. He was just a man, a father. The nurse smiled. "He looks like you, sir." Anthony laughed softly, disbelief and pride blending in his eyes. They named the child Ethan Kelvin James. In that hospital room, amidst exhaustion and silence, Anthony made a silent promise. "I will give you both a life free from pain, no matter what it costs me." The world outside hadn't forgiven him. Opponents demanded DNA proof and accused him of covering up a national scandal. Vivian and Tina fed the media with more lies. Anthony called a press conference, standing tall but weary. "Yes," he said firmly, "I love Angela James. She did not seduce me. I wronged her unknowingly, and I stand by her today." His words shook the nation. Some cheered his honesty, others mocked his vulnerability. But his courage inspired millions of women who'd suffered in silence. Meanwhile, Barrett secretly gathered evidence exposing Vivian and Tina's schemes, emails, recordings, and transactions. With the help of Detective Harper, a loyal officer, they uncovered the conspiracy. When the truth went public, the media turned against Vivian and Tina. Vivian was arrested for coercion and fraud, while Tina fled the country amid shame. Angela watched the news with silent tears, not of sorrow, but of release. The ghosts of her past were finally buried. Weeks later, Anthony visited Angela's home holding a small velvet box. The estate garden bloomed in spring, and Ethan giggled in Maria's arms. Angela, still shy, looked radiant in a simple dress. "I came to ask for something I don't deserve," Anthony began. She smiled faintly. Then, "Don't ask, earn it." He knelt again, just like the night of his confession, but this time with peace in his eyes. "Angela James, you turned my punishment into purpose. Will you marry me, not as a president, but as the man who owes you his heart?" Silence hung for a long moment before her tears broke into laughter. "You never stop kneeling, do you?" she whispered. She didn't answer with words, just leaned forward and kissed him softly. In that single kiss, forgiveness was sealed. Ethan clapped his little hands as if blessing the union, and the housekeeper wiped her tears with joy. Their new chapter had finally begun. Despite Anthony's wish for privacy, the nation demanded a public ceremony. The media branded it the love story that changed the palace. The wedding was held at St. George's Chapel, under heavy security, but glowing with grace. Foreign dignitaries attended, yet Angela refused royal extravagance. She wore a simple white gown, the same color as the first dress she'd ever owned, her beauty radiant in its humility. As she walked down the aisle holding Ethan's tiny hand, Anthony's eyes filled with pride. When the priest said, "You may kiss the bride," applause thundered. The image of the orphan turned First Lady filled headlines worldwide. Vivian watched the broadcast from prison, tears of regret staining her cheeks. Even Tina, in hiding, couldn't escape the shame of seeing what she destroyed now reborn as love. The wedding became not just a union of two souls, but a symbol of redemption, courage, and grace that inspired millions across the country. Months after their marriage, as peace seemed restored, a new challenge emerged. A high-ranking government official, jealous of Anthony's newfound popularity, plotted a corruption scandal to destabilize him. Forged documents and false witnesses began surfacing. Angela, now First Lady, refused to stand idle. Using her intelligence and empathy, she began quietly helping Barrett and Harper uncover conspiracy. She interviewed staff, traced missing documents, and rallied the media through transparency and honesty. Her courage stunned the political world. A woman once mocked as a corn seller became the voice of integrity in the palace. When the truth finally broke, the official was exposed and arrested. Anthony looked at his wife during the victory press conference and whispered, "You saved my presidency." She smiled back, holding Ethan in her arms. No, she said softly. We saved our family. Years later, the story of Angela and Anthony became legend. Their love, born from tragedy, grew into a symbol of hope. Ethan, now 5, played in the palace gardens where his mother once sold corn. Anthony, older and wiser, often watched him from the balcony, filled with gratitude. Angela turned her passion into a national program, Hearts of Hope, providing support for homeless mothers. Her face, once unknown, became the face of compassion across the nation. On their wedding anniversary, Anthony took her to the same street where they first met. The corn stand still stood, rebuilt by locals as a monument. Angela lit a small fire, roasted corn, and handed him one with a smile. Full circle, she whispered. He nodded, eyes misty. From ashes to grace. As they watched the sunset, hand in hand, the world seemed finally still. A story of pain, redemption, and love that neither power nor poverty could destroy. That's all for today. Like, subscribe, and see you in the next episode. Stay tuned.